To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.
Right, children. Now we are going to start the second chapter of this lesson. Do you remember what we learned in the first chapter, children? We learned there are 3 minerals present in soil called sand, silt and clay. And according to the abundance of each mineral, there are 3 different types of soil types. Okay, there are sandy soil, clay soil and loamy soil, right? And in this chapter, we are going to learn about the composition of soil. So what can we find in soil? Okay, so we are going to start this chapter by doing an activity. This is also a very easy activity. You all can try to do this at home. Okay, activity. Separation of components in the soil. So what do we need to do this activity? We need a long polythene tube and we need a piece of thread, a soil sample. So it's better if you can obtain this soil sample from somewhere under a tree with organic matter, right? And we need some water, right? We will write long polythene tube, piece of thread. Soil sample. And some water. Okay, so we'll do this. We'll check how to do this activity method. Cut a polythene tube about 50 centimeter long and tie one end of it, right? So you have to take a polythene tube and you have to, its length should be about 50 centimeters long and you have to tie one end of it, right? Fill 3/4 of the tube with water. Okay. Dig a hole in your school garden and take a sample of soil from it. Mix the soil sample with water separately. Right? You have to take water separately into another vessel and you have to put the soil sample to this water. Okay. This is water and you have to put the soil sample into this and mix well. Right? And then what do you have to do? Then add it to the water already present in the polythene bag. That tube-like polythene bag, there's already water present, right? So because here it's given, fill 3/4 of the tube with water. And then after filling it with water, you have to pour this soil sample with water also into the same polythene bag. Okay? Then add it to the water already present in the polythene bag and leave it to settle. You have to leave it for about an hour. So what will happen? Now you must have done this activity when you are small children, right? In your lower grade, sometimes you are asked to do this activity, right? Take an empty jam bottle and take a little bit of soil and put it to the jam bottle and fill water up to the top of the jam bottle and you have to mix this soil. Leave it to settle and observe later. What did you observe then? Did you observe the soil? Now earlier soil was present as a mixture and when you do this activity after about an hour when you observe, you can see soil is layered up nicely, right? That is what we are going to observe here. Okay children, so after about an hour when you observe, you will see soil inside this long polythene tube. You can see the soil sample is layered up. So you can see the heaviest particles in the bottom likewise. Right, let's do this activity in the lab now. Right children, so as I explained you all before, now we are going to separate the components in soil. Okay children, so we are going to see what are the different components present in soil by doing this activity. Okay, so here I have a soil sample. I need to dissolve this soil in water, mix it with water. Okay, so first of all I am going to put this soil into this beaker. Right. Now here I have the soil in the beaker and I'm going to pour a little amount of water into this. And then stir it well. Right. So here I have a polythene tube, you all can see, and I need to put some water into this, all this water into the polythene tube, and then I am going to transfer this water and soil sample into the polythene tube, okay? Right. And now I'm going to mix this again. And pour it into this polythene tube. Right, children. So now you have to let it set for about an hour. So then you will see that all the components present in the soil sample gets layered up from bottom to top. Okay, so we need to keep this for about an hour. Therefore, using the laboratory stand, I am going to keep it now. Right, so using this string, I am going to tie up the mouth. You have to tie it up and then you have to get, using the laboratory stand, you have to get the support. Right, children. So to observe all the layers, all the components very well, we need to leave it for about an hour. So it takes a long time. Therefore, I have the same activity previously prepared one. So I will show you that. Right, children. So this is a previously prepared same setup, right? So check whether you can see different layers of components, children. So when we mix this, now normally when we take a soil sample, all the components are mixed with each other randomly. Okay. So when we do this activity, you can see the heaviest particles, heaviest components go to the bottom. They settle at the bottom and the lighter ones come and some particles you all can see, they are nicely floating in water. Right, children? So look at the bottommost layer, you all can see nicely gravel. This is the layer of gravel. Okay, that is the heaviest layer. Then on top of gravel, you all can see somewhere here hard sand layer. Okay, children, hard sand layer. And if you observe very carefully, you will see above the hard sand layer, fine sand-like layer is also there. That is called silt, right? That is the silt layer. And if you observe carefully, you will see a light color, very thin layer. Thin light color layer, children. That is the clay layer. Okay. And here you can see the water with clay particles. Okay. If you observe, there are tiny particles present in water. These are clay particles. Okay. And here, what are these particles that float on water, children? That is plant and animal materials, plant and animal parts. Okay. So, if you observe carefully, these heavy plant and animal particles are settled on the clay layer. Okay, children. So, if you do this activity even at home, you can do this type of activity very easily. Okay. So, I hope you understood this part very well. Right, children. So, what did you observe? We observed something like this. Right, children? So, when we did that activity, when we put that soil sample with water into this long polythene tube with water, what happened? And we let it to settle for about 1 hour, right? So, then you could see very clearly it layers up like this, right? Shall we label these layers? Right. This is the polythene bag with water, plant and animal matter, water with clay particles, and this is clay, silt, sand and gravel. Gravel, hard sand, silt, clay. This is the water. Water with clay particles. Plant and animal parts. Animal parts. Particles. This is polythene tube. Right, children? So the polythene tube, plant and animal matter, water with clay particles, clay, silt, hard sand, gravel. Right? Based on the type of soil that you chose, this can be different. Okay, sometimes certain soils, if you took the soil like very fine soil, you will not see a lot of gravel. Right? Only a few gravels will be seen. Okay, that depends on the place you obtain your soil sample from. Okay, children, and you won't be able to see this plant and a lot of plant and animal particles if you took your soil sample from somewhere very dry without any plants at all. Okay, so that's why I said it's better to take the soil sample from somewhere around a tree. Okay, so that you can observe these particles as well. Right? So, what is the conclusion after doing this activity? It's very clear that soil is a mixture of different components. It's not just one thing, it's a mixture of different components. Okay, so what's the conclusion? Soil is a mixture of different components. Different components, okay? Soil is a mixture of different components, right, children? Okay. Soil is a mixture of different components. The ratios of these mixtures are different in various types of soil. Based on the place you obtain the soil, the ratio is different. Some soil samples contain more sand or more gravels likewise. Okay, this is important. The ratios of these mixtures are different in various types of soil. Right? The following figure shows the results of a study carried out on the composition of different types of soil. 3 samples are given: sand, loam and clay. Sandy soil, loamy soil and clay soil. Look at the ratios given. Right, in sandy soil, look at the bottom one, 80 to 100% sand percent. Right, 80 to 100% sand percent means more amount of, even more than half of it contains sand. Right, when you take the entire sample. Only 0 to 10% clay, 0 to 10% silt, it depends. Right, in sandy soil, right, all the sandy soils always, they have 80 to 100% of sand. Okay, look at the next one, loamy soil. Loamy soil, look, all 3 particles contain 10 to 30% of clay, 30 to 50% of silt, 25 to 50% of sand. It depends from place to place. Right, even if you take a certain amount of loamy soil from an agricultural land, it might be different from the loamy soil present in your home garden. Okay, so it's not always the same, children. Okay, clay soil, 50 to 100% clay particles, 0 to 45% of silt and 0 to 45% of sand. That also depends. That's why it's given as a range, not exact value. Right? It can vary between these percentages, children. Okay, so after doing all these activities, it's very clear that soil is made up of different components, by mixing different types of substances in it, different components present. And from place to place, these components present also differs. Okay, children, there's not always just one type. It's always a combination of different substances. And the amount, right? The amounts of these substances, the components, these particles also changes from place to place. Okay? Right. Next one. Components of soil can be listed as follows. So what are these components now? We will write down, right? The first one we can write as solid components. Solid components. Now, solid components can be again divided into 2 parts. Right? So, what are these 2 parts? We can divide them as soil minerals. Now, you already know what soil minerals are. Right? Based on the mineral particles. Sand, silt and clay are considered as main soil minerals. Okay? Soil minerals and soil organic matter. What is the meaning of soil organic matter? Soil organic matter means the plant and animal parts. Basically, dead plant or decaying plant and animal parts present in the soil is known as soil organic matter. There's another name for this. These are again known as humus. Humus. Okay, soil organic matter is known as humus as well. Number 2. Solid components is the first one, right? Second one, soil air. Right? In between soil particles, air is trapped. This is known as soil air. Okay? Number 3, soil water. Right? Soil water. So now we know that certain types of soil can retain water well, and some other types of soil cannot retain water. So the amount of water present in the soil also changes from place to place and also time to time. So during drought seasons, even the nutrient-rich soils also will dry up and the amount of soil water will decrease. Okay? So what is the fourth one? Fourth one is soil organisms. Right, soil organisms, there are 2 types of organisms, macroorganisms and microorganisms. Macroorganisms means the animals that we can see that are living in soil. Right, millipedes, centipedes, some beetles, you must have seen some snails and earthworms. Right, children? They are coming under macroorganisms because we can see them with our naked eyes. Even though we can't see, microorganisms are also there. Okay, so they are all coming under soil organisms. Right, children? So, what are the components of soil? Solid components. Under solid components, there are two main solid components. Soil minerals, which means sand, silt and clay. Right? Soil organic matter, which is known as humus. Right? What are these? These are the decaying animal and plant matter. Okay? Soil air, soil water and soil organisms. So when we consider soil organisms, there are microorganisms as well as macroorganisms. Okay? So now we are going to learn under each topic, right? About more details about each topics, and basically we are going to learn what are the functions of these substances, these components in soil. Right, children? We'll move on to the next. Right. So first we are going to learn about soil minerals. We already learned about soil minerals, children. Right? We learn about clay particles, sand particles and silt particles. Now we know when we consider these three particles, sand particles are the biggest and clay particles are the smallest. Okay? So based on the combination or the abundance of these particles, there are three types of soil as well. Okay? So we'll go through this. Solid components in the soil such as clay, silt and sand are considered soil minerals. Okay? So when you study the composition of the soil, you have studied these particles. We learn about this in the first chapter. Okay? So what are the functions of soil minerals, children? These minerals are very important. We'll go through this. Minerals that are obtained from soil to plants are provided by soil minerals. Right, children? So we always discuss about for the growth of the plants, plants absorb water and minerals from soil. So these are the minerals, right? These minerals are dissolved in soil water and then absorbed by the plants. Okay, children? So minerals that are obtained from soil to plants are provided by soil minerals. Therefore, soil minerals are very important for the plant growth. Okay? Water and minerals are retained by the clay particles in the soil. When there are more clay particles, water and minerals can be retained by these clay particles well. Do you remember I explained you all when we learn about this clay soil? Clay particles have this special ability to combine with water molecules. Therefore, whenever there is clay soil, that clay soil is sticky because of presence of water. Okay? Right? So water and minerals are retained by the clay particles in the soil. So when you consider loamy soil can retain water because of the presence of these clay particles and also because of the presence of organic materials. Okay, children? Right. We'll move on to the next. Soil organic materials. Right now, this is a solid part of the soil. Okay? So when you consider soil minerals and soil organic materials, they are considered as the solid components of soil. Okay? Right. So soil organic materials or humus. Right, children? Decayed parts of animals and plants in soil are called soil organic materials. Right? Dead bodies of plants and animals are decayed by microorganisms and also some macroorganisms. Sometimes worms, right? Some other animals, when they feed on these dead bodies are decayed, right? So these decayed parts of animals and plants are known as organic materials or humus. So we already learned that these organic materials provide nutrients to soil. Whenever there is organic materials or humus is combined with soil, that type of soil can retain water very well, can retain air very well. Okay, so what are the functions of soil organic materials? As storage of nutrients needed for the growth of plants. Right, organic materials, the dead bodies of plants and animals contain a lot of nutrients. As they decay gradually, these minerals, these substances are given to the soil. That is how the soil becomes rich. Okay, so as storage of nutrients needed for the growth of plants. increase the capacity of retaining air in soil, right? Air in soil. Air in soil. Air in soil, right? Increase the capacity of retaining air in soil. Okay, prevents the cracks in the soil during dry seasons, because during the dry seasons, this type of soil, if a certain soil has more organic materials, it can retain more and more water, and thereby during the dry seasons, it will not get exposed to sunlight much, right? Have you seen, when you consider these forests, the entire soil, entire surface of the soil is covered with plant leaves and these plant parts, and also some animal materials too. Because of that, these type of soils will not expose to strong sunlight. Because of the sunlight, the water in the soil will evaporate, and if the soil is mixed with organic materials well, this soil will not get cracks during the dry seasons also, because the water will be protected inside the soil. Okay, so prevents the cracks in the soil during dry seasons. Okay, increase retention of water in the soil. Retention of air is increased, retention of water is also increased because of the presence of these organic materials. Okay, right. So there's this activity we have to do to prove that these organic materials can retain more water. By adding humus to sandy soil, the water retention capacity is increased. Plan an experiment that can be conducted in the school laboratory to find the accuracy of this statement. Now, isn't this a very important activity that we can do, children? How can we do this activity? Now, I'm sure you can think about an activity very easily, right? Here, what we can do is, we can take two similar soil samples. We have to make sure, now here we have to take sandy soil. We have to take two sandy soil samples from the same place, the similar amounts. Right, children? So we can put it into a plastic cup with holes in the bottom. Right? So we will simply draw a diagram to do this one. Right. We have to use two similar plastic cups like this, plastic or any other material. Right. Two similar cups with holes at the bottom. Right, with holes at the bottom. And then we have to fill these cups with sandy soil. Right, we have to fill these cups with sandy soil. So we have to make sure we take this sandy soil is taken from the same place. Right, only one cup should be covered. The sandy soil should be mixed with organic materials. Organic materials. You can take some dried leaves, right? And some animal parts like mixed with soil. You can easily find these type of organic matter from under a tree, right? Or maybe even from a flower bed. Okay, children? So then what you have to do? You have to pour water onto this soil now. Both the setups, you have to pour some water. Make sure you pour the similar amount of water. If you pour 100 milliliters onto this setup, 100 milliliters of water should be poured to this setup as well. Right? Let's consider water. Water. Let's consider 100 milliliters. Or 50. Right? This one also the same amount. 100 milliliters. Right, children? Then what you have to do is, you have to take another beaker and you have to collect the water that comes down, because now these bottom of these plastic cup has holes. When you pour water, what happens? Now remember, if you take small yogurt cups, you should not pour 100 milliliters. It's too much. Okay, the amount should be less. Okay, so then when you pour this water will go through the soil sample and it will come out from the bottom through the holes, right? So you have to collect this one as well, this amount of water as well, right? You have to collect this amount of water as well to another beaker, right? To another beaker, you have to collect this water collector. Right? And finally, after about 10 minutes, you have to leave both the setups the same time period. Let's say 15 minutes. After that time period, you have to collect these water samples and you have to measure the volumes of these water samples and check whether which one has more water collected at the bottom. Right, children? So we'll go to the lab and do this very interesting activity now. Right, children? In this activity, we are going to prove that the water retention capacity of soil can be increased by adding humus to soil. Okay? So as I explained you all before, here I have a sandy soil sample and here I have some humus, organic material, right? And here I have 2 beakers and I have placed these 2 yogurt cups on these beakers like this, right? Observe carefully the bottom of the yogurt cups. I have made some tiny holes. Okay, bottom of these cups contain tiny holes. Okay, right. And I have 2 samples of water of the same amount. So these 2 beakers contain 60 milliliters of water in each. Okay, right. So first of all, what I have to do is I am going to put similar soil samples into each of these yogurt cups. Okay, right. So with the spoon, I am going to put here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I put 5 tablespoons of soil to this cup. Even to the next one, I am going to put the same amount. Okay. Two, 3, 4, 5. Right. And now as I explained you all before, what do I have to do, children? To one of these setups, I need to put some humus on top of this soil. Okay. So humus means organic materials, plant and animal materials. Okay, so we are going to show you all that when humus present in soil or when organic materials present in soil, these type of soil can retain more water, right? So now we have 2 samples with beakers here, right? In both the setups, soil is contained, sandy soil is contained. Only in this setup, we put humus, okay? Now what I am going to do is, I am going to pour this 60 milliliters of water onto each of these samples. First to the sand sample, and then to this sand sample with humus. Right. So you all can see the excess water will get collected in the beakers kept underneath. So we are going to observe this after about 5 minutes. Right, children? So now we are going to observe these two setups after 5 minutes. Okay? What can you see? If you observe carefully, you can see that still water is getting added to the beaker kept at the bottom. Okay, children, which means it is still going through the soil sample, which means certain amount of water is still remaining in the soil sample. Okay, that is why process is still happening here, right? But what can you see here? So in this setup, all the water we poured onto the soil sample is whatever the remaining part is added to the beaker here. You can't see any drops of water getting added to this beaker anymore. Okay, so now I'm going to measure these water samples collected at the inside the beakers. Okay, right. So here using the measuring cylinder, I'm going to measure this. So earlier we poured 60 milliliters of water onto each of these samples. Observe carefully. So what can you observe? The amount of water is 45 milliliters, right? The amount of water collected in the first beaker is 45 milliliters. Okay, earlier we added 60 milliliters. Now here 45 milliliters have gone through the soil and collected in the other beaker. Okay, right. So now I will take the second sample. Right, children. Take the reading now, children. What can you see? Now this time the water collected at the bottom of the second beaker is about 33 milliliters. Right? Even to this one we poured 60 milliliters. So after going through the soil, the water collected in this second beaker is, what is the amount? 33 milliliters. Right? When we poured this water onto the soil sample, the sandy soil sample, what happened? Earlier we poured 60 milliliters of water. About 45 milliliters was collected in the beaker. Right? 45 milliliters of water collected in the beaker. Right? And when we used the second soil sample covered with humus and we poured the same amount of water, what happened, children? This time the amount of water collected in the beaker was less, which means more water was retained by the soil. Right? Here more amount of water is collected in the beaker means less amount of water is retained by the soil. Right? All the conditions were the same, children. We use similar type of yogurt cups. Right? We use similar amounts of soil. Right? Each yogurt cup contains 5 tablespoons of soil, right? And each time we poured 60 milliliters of water. The only difference we made was in this soil sample, we put some humus on top of the soil sample. Okay, so after doing this activity, it's very clear when sandy soil is mixed with humus, it can retain or it can keep more water in it. So you all observed what happened there. We did the activity like this, and after some time we collected the amounts of water collected in each of these beakers and then we measured the samples. So it was very clear that more water was collected in this first vessel, the soil sample that we used without the cover of this organic matter. Right? To the second one, we put some organic matter. We mix the sandy soil with organic materials, right? And then what happened, children? It could retain more water, right? we poured equal volumes of water into both these soil samples, and that water goes through the soil and goes through these tiny holes and collects in these two beakers, right? So it was obvious that when we consider these two beakers, this beaker had more water than that of this beaker, right? This beaker has less amount of water collected, means the soil retains, or the soil keeps more water with it, right? Here what happens, this beaker collects more water, means the soil does not keep that much of water as this sample. So here the only difference was we use the same type of soil, same amount of soil, same types of cups here. The only difference we made was we added some humus here, organic materials, right? So it's obvious now, by adding humus or by adding organic materials to this soil, or any soil, sandy soil here, right, water retention capacity is increased. Right, children? We'll move on to the next. Right. So now we are going to learn about soil air as the next component. Right. So earlier I explained that soil particles, between soil particles, when there is space between soil particles, right, if these are the particles, between these spaces, soil air is present. Okay, children, between these places, soil air is present. So the soil air is very important, okay, because the soil air contains oxygen. So this oxygen is important for the soil organisms to respirate, okay. So we'll go through this. What happens when a soil clod is put into a water beaker, right? You can observe air bubbles emitting from the soil clod. Right? It's clear that air in the soil is coming out as bubbles. We will do this activity now. Right, children? We are going to do this simple activity to prove that soil contains air. Okay? So as I explained you all, here I have a beak of water and I have a soil clod. So what do I have to do? I have to put this soil clod into water and check what happens. Let's do this. Right, observe carefully. What can you see, children? Can you all see air bubbles coming up? So observe carefully. You will see air bubbles coming up time to time. Right, children? So where do these air bubbles coming up from, children? These air bubbles are the air that is trapped in between soil particles. Okay? So when we put water, what happens, children? When we put this soil clod into water, water goes in between the space, releasing the air out. When the water takes up the space earlier occupied by air, that air goes out as air bubbles. Okay, children? So observe. You can still see time to time some air bubbles coming up. Right, children? Right. Okay. As the water goes through the soil particles, air trapped in those spaces comes up as air bubbles. So after doing this activity, it's very clear that air is present in soil. Right, children. So you all observed what happened there. We put a soil clod to that beaker, and then what happened? We could see that air bubbles coming up from the soil clod. Okay. So here look at this label diagram: glass, air bubbles, soil clods, water. So where did that soil come from? That was the air that was trapped in between soil particles. So when we put this soil into water, that spaces were occupied by water. Water goes through those spaces, leaving the air bubbles out. Okay, so when water occupies these tiny spaces, what happens? Air trapped inside these spaces, in between these spaces, will come out as air bubbles. So it's very clear that soil contains water, right? To prove this better, we are going to do another activity too. Right, children? So activity, this time proving that soil contains air. Okay, so we already observed that soil contains air by that soil clod experiment. We are going to prove it here too. So we need to do this activity, we need two similar glass jars, a soil sample and water. Okay, two glass jars or two beakers. A soil sample and water. Right, children? We'll see how to do this method. Look at this one. Put soil into one vessel up to 4 centimeters. This is the vessel, this is the jar with soil, right? Up to 4 centimeters. This height should be 4 centimeters, right? Next one, put water into the other vessel also up to 4 centimeters. This time the height of the water in the jar also should be 4 centimeters. Okay, right. Put soil into one vessel up to 4 centimeters. Put water into the other vessel up to 4 centimeters. Add water in the water vessel into the vessel with soil. Now what you have to do is add water in the water vessel into the vessel with soil. You have to pour this water into this jar with soil. Okay, children? Now you have to leave it to settle for a minute. Then measure the height from the bottom to the water level. Okay, you have to, now earlier this was 4 centimeters. This was also 4 centimeters. You have to pour this water onto this soil and then you have to measure the height of this entire mixture. It means when you pour water like this, earlier this was 4 centimeters soil, you have to pour water and then you have to measure the height after a minute. What is the height? Right? Then measure the height from the bottom to the water level. Repeat the above experiment using soil samples collected from different locations. This is very important. Even this activity you all can try at home. Okay, let's do this activity now. Right, children. We are going to do this activity to prove that soil contains air. So I already explained you all how to do this activity. So here I have two similar beakers, some water, and here I have a soil sample. Right, children? So now what I am going to do is, first of all, I have to mark these two beakers up to 4 centimeters. I have already marked it. In one beaker, I have marked up to 8 centimeters because I am going to add both the samples to this beaker only, right? Now I will show you using this ruler. This is 4 centimeters. If you observe carefully, you will see. So look carefully, children. Now it is 4 centimeters. I have marked it up to 4 centimeters. Now here you all can see I have marked up to 4 centimeters down, and here from up it's 8 centimeters. Right, children? Okay. So first of all I am going to fill water into this beaker first up to the 4 centimeters. Now it is up to 4 centimeters. And now I have to fill soil in this beaker up to 4 centimeters. Right, children. Observe carefully. Now I have filled soil up to 4 centimeters here. Now what do I have to do? I have to pour this water at the height of 4 centimeters into this second beaker with soil. Right? So now the original, now here this is 4 centimeters, this is 4 centimeters. The original height should be 8 centimeters. We'll check whether it's going to happen here. Okay? Right. So observe carefully, children. You will see small air bubbles also coming up. If you observe carefully, you will see air bubbles also coming up. Right, children? So now check what is the height. What is the height, children? It is not 8 centimeters. It is less than 8 centimeters. Okay? I will measure the height using this ruler. So if you observe carefully, you can see the height is about 6 centimeters, children. Right? Height is about 6 centimeters. So why does this happen, children? We used for water 4 centimeters height, soil sample also 4 centimeters height. But when we mix them together, it doesn't make 8 centimeters height. Why? What is the reason? Even though we cannot see between the soil particles, the air is trapped. Right, children? So when we pour water onto this soil, what happens, children? Air goes out and the water occupies that space taken up by the air before. Right, children? So as the air moves out, there's more space for water to go in between the soil particles. Only some amount of water will present above the surface of the soil. Okay, children? So that is why, because some part of this water is inside the soil. Right? Only some part will above the soil layer. Right? So that is why it does not make 8 centimeters height. So after doing this activity, it's very clear that air is present in between soil particles. Right, children? So you observed what happened. What did we do? We put soil up to 4 centimeters height to one jar, one beaker, and to the other beaker we put water up to the same height, 4 centimeters. Then we poured this water over this soil. Right? When we measured the height, it was less than 8 centimeters. Why does this happen, children? Right? Now when you can write the observation, this height is less than 8 centimeters. Right? When water is added to soil, the height of the mixture is less than 8 centimeters. That's the observation. What is the reason? This happens because even though we can't see in between these soil particles, there is spaces, right? In between soil particles, there are spaces and there is air. So when you pour this water onto this soil, what will happen, children? This air escapes and water occupies the spaces occupied by air, right? Now, because of these spaces, even though we can't see, there's a lot of spaces between these soil particles, some amount of water goes through these soil particles and settle in the bottom parts. Right, children? That is why, because some amount of water goes through the soil particles, the entire height is not equal to 8 centimeters. It is always less than 8 centimeters. Just imagine if the soil sample did not have any space at all, any amount of air at all. When we pour this water onto this one, there's no way that water can go through the soil. Therefore, this water will remain on the top of the soil layer, and then the height also will be 8 centimeters. Because here 4 centimeters plus 4 centimeters should be 8 centimeters. Right? But that it does not take place 8 centimeters because of the air present here. So when you pour water over this one, what happens, children? The water takes up the air space. Therefore, the entire height is not 8. Okay, children? Let's write this one. Water takes the space of air by going through the soil particles. Therefore, the height is less than 8 centimeters. Therefore, it is clear that soil contains water, air. Okay? Water takes the space of air by going through soil particles. Therefore, the height is less than 8 centimeters. Therefore, it is clear that soil contains air. Right, children? Right. In the above activity, water has moved into the space among soil particles. When water moves into those spaces, air present in them is released. Right, children? Air which retains in soil particles is called soil air. Okay, so air present between the soil particles is known as soil air. Okay, so functions of soil air. What is the importance of soil air? I already explained y'all, right? So oxygen present in the soil air is very important for the respiration of organisms. We'll go through this. Provides air needed for the respiration of soil organisms and plant roots as well. Plant roots are also made up of cells. They also need air. Okay. Needs in the germination of seeds. Right? When you plant seeds, in order to germinate, in order to grow it as a new plant, that also needs air. Okay, that's also provided by the soil air. Creates porosity in the soil. What is the meaning of porosity? So, because of the presence of air, there is space among these spaces are taken up by this air, and it makes pores present, tiny holes present between the soil particles. Right? So, creates porosity in the soil. So, soil is not very tight. Okay? Soil is a bit loose because of the presence of soil air. Right? This is important for the plant growth. Okay, children? So, we have completed this chapter as well. So, in this chapter, we learn about some components present in soil. So, under this, we learn about the solid components and soil air. So, under solid components, we learn about soil organic matter and soil minerals. And here we learn about soil air and all of their functions. So, even in the next chapter, we are going to learn about the other components present in soil.
To watch these important lessons, subscribe to DP Education's YouTube channel right now. Click on the bell icon to stay updated on the latest lessons. Sri Lanka's largest free online school, DP Education.